Early specialisation versus early diversification. Youth participation in sport is increasing, as Brenner 2007 estimates that between 35 to 45 million youth aged 6 to 18 participate in some form of organised or recreational sport. However, according to Johnson 2008, the multi-sport athlete is becoming a thing of the past. This raises the question, which method is best at developing athletes, early specialisation or early diversification? Early specialisation is characterised by formal participation in single sport at the exclusion of others, or intense year-round training in a specific sport with the exclusion of other sports at a young age. So, where did it all begin? Specialisation in a single sport was perceived to have begun in Eastern Europe with activities such as gymnastics, swimming, diving and figure skating. Most Olympic sports have a selection process that attempts to identify future champions and initiate specialised training often before the prospect finishes early primary school. The relative success of these programmes has led to early talent identification and development programmes focusing on single sport globally. There are several factors that contribute to the desire of young athletes to specialise in a single sport, including the pursuit of scholarships or professional contracts, being labelled as talented by parents or coaches, and retail and industry and media reports. A 2006 New York Times article notes that a growing number of coaches, parents and children believe that the best way to produce superior young athletes is to have them play only one sport from an early age and to play it virtually year-round. So, what about sports diversification? Sports diversification is the participation in a variety of sports to which a participant develops multilateral, physical, social and psychological skills. The belief behind sports diversification is that physical and cognitive abilities may develop quicker via playing multiple sports because of a potential crossover effect. For example, instead of only developing hand-eye coordination as it pertains to hitting and throwing in baseball, a child playing baseball and football can also develop foot-eye coordination, footwork and running mechanics. Evidence also shows that the ability of a player to read the game or understand player movement and pattern configurations with proper visual cues will likely have a higher rate of crossover if the athlete is participating in sports with similar pattern configurations. This method provides an environment that may nurture a genuine love for sport so that productive, structured practice may follow. The National Association for Sport and Physical Education guidelines for participation in youth sport programmes suggested that early sports diversification provides enhanced opportunities for youth development. Beyond the physical development, benefits gained from participation in a variety of sports, psychological and social development can be enhanced as well. For example, a wide range of sports activities during youth will promote diverse relationships and experience in children and adolescents. As adolescents grow into young adults, their multiple sport background can expand their adult physical activity options and foster an intrinsic interest in lifelong sports participation. The International Olympic Committee also put out a consensus statement on youth athletic development, in which they wrote, "Children who participate in a variety of sports and specialise only after reaching the age of puberty, for example, tend to be more consistent performers, have fewer injuries, and adhere to sports to play longer than those who specialise early." On top of this, Jayanthi et al. 2012 states that athletes who experience greater diversification in their younger years increase their chances of sporting success later on in life. However, very few national governing bodies actually support early diversification. The NBA is one of the few that supports the concept of sport sampling and programmes that provide for personal engagement in sport. They even recommend delaying single sport specialisation until mid-adolescence to late adolescence for basketball. One reason why so many NGBs are against the multisport athlete is due to the risk of overuse injuries. Multi-sport athletes who participate in 2 or more sports for which the major emphasis is the same body part are at higher risk of overuse injuries than athletes that specialise in one single sport. Although, the same issues can also be found in early specialisation. Data suggests that there are tangible risks due to sport specialisation for young athletes, including cardiac, musculoskeletal, nutrition, social isolation, and burnout. Burnout syndrome is associated with the changes in a young athlete's cognitive and mood profile. It can be defined as physical and emotional exhaustion from the psychological and physiological demands of an athlete's sport. Burnout can become so severe it can cause withdrawal or dropout from the activities that were previously enjoyable to the athlete. Early specialisation can also lead to reduced motor skill development. This occurs as young athletes focus on the motor skills needed for their sport but ignore the motor skills developed through a diversified participation programme. The commencement of formalised intensive training during the pre-pubertal years in one chosen sport by excluding others imposes demands on young children who are exhaustive and entail high psychological pressures reflective of those undertaken by adults. On top of this, early specialisation can lead young people into sports that often are not their own choice, compelling them to remain in activities that are not motivating or suitable for their athletic abilities. Evidence shows that those who specialise younger rarely commit to the sport in the long term. So, with all this in mind, why do so many NGBs push early specialisation? There is a theory that states the earlier an individual starts with purposeful practice of a skill, the earlier one becomes an expert in that skill. This relates closely to the 10-year rule, which is a general criteria for teaching chess that proposes that 10 years is a sufficient period of time to amass the level of knowledge to be considered an expert. Utilising this theory, it can be concluded that in order for athletes to be the best at a particular skill or sport, they need to start early with skill development and practice very specific activities to improve their strengths and reduce their weaknesses. So, what can we conclude from all this information? Diversification in sports at an early age has the potential to provide stimuli so that a child's body can adapt and develop multiple motor skills that may cross over between sports. However, only once the mental, physical and social aspects of a child are fully developed can specialisation be considered. Perhaps the most beneficial method is to allow the children to choose their own sport that they are passionate about.